and welcome again to the National Land Realty podcast. This is episode number 101. Our goal here is to inform, educate, and entertain those of you who own land or are interested in the buying and selling of land throughout the United States. My name is Equestrian, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at National Land Realty, and I will be your host for this episode. Now, Middleburg, Virginia is an equestrian paradise. It's got fox hunts, equestrian facilities, and incredible landscapes, which all help to make this area of Virginia a destination for those who live the equestrian lifestyle. Today, we're talking with National Land Realty agent Miley Holtzman about this wonderful area. Now sit back and enjoy. Okay, so I am sitting here with Miley Holtzman, and Miley, you are and you got to throw something at me if I get this wrong. Middleburg, North Virginia. You work out of Northern Virginia, and you have a unique history that we're going to get into here, but I want you to tell a little bit about your background and sort of how you got to where you are now.
Sure. So I am originally from Richmond, Virginia. That's Central Virginia. I went to school in Blacksburg, which is in the mountains of Virginia. I graduated with a degree in real estate and decided I wanted to move up here, mainly because Middleburg is one of the equine capitals of the world, very well known for fox hunting, all sorts of equestrian sports. And I thought I would combine my knowledge of both topics, real estate and horses, to move up here and start my career.
Great. And so what exactly is your background in horses? Because we talked before, and I have what I've snooped at as far as your profile and everything. I mean, not really snooped. It's just your profile on National Land Realty, but you have a background in fox hunting and equestrian sports. So I've got tons of questions that we can probably fill up a whole podcast on for this. Tell me a little bit about all of that.
Sure. So I did show jumping and, showing, competing as a child, which is very similar to what they do in the Olympics, just at a much lower level. And then as soon as I moved to Middleburg, I started fox hunting, which is, I would say, used to be a form of pest control back in the day, historically. So foxes would steal the farmers' chickens and kill lambs and things. So all of the neighbors would get together and go out and hunt foxes. Well, nowadays, we're not trying to kill foxes. I would call it more like fox chasing. It's more for sport. And it's just an activity to do outside with your friends and your community, your neighbors. So
is this, I have the Hollywood version of fox hunting stuck in my head, and I can't help it because I've never been around it or seen it. How formal is this? Or how formalized is I totally have this picture of like the red coats and the black hats and the tallest boots and
yes,
perfect form while you're riding. And is it like that?
So during the summer season, I would say at the end of summer, beginning fall, it's very informal. Everyone's just getting ready again. The official formal season is from November to March. And that is the true traditional, you're wearing your coat, your black boots, your whatever.
It is exactly how not many.
The huntsmen are wearing the red coat. Yes. Yes.
Not many things in my life work out how they go through my head. So that's fantastic.
So we're following a pack of foxhounds, and everyone's mounted on horseback, or you can also go on foot and just follow in your car. Each hunt sticks to their own territory mostly. So, for example, Orange County hunt is the hunt I go out with most. And it doesn't actually have anything to do with Orange County, Virginia, but it is just what they call themselves because in the 1900s, I think early 1900s, they moved from Orange County, New York to Virginia. So that's just what they call themselves.
So what are the rules to a, because I'm assuming there's rules and I
Yes.
like, so I've read a little bit of like I had to prep for this a little bit, but I it still kind of it blows my mind a little bit. Like it's just and not just because it's I'm not trying to say it's weird or anything. It's just so foreign to me. Like I've never been around anything like that. So for anybody listening or anybody, tell me the rules to a fox hunt, how it goes, what it's like to go on one, and sort of how it concludes.
Sure. So the huntsman is the orchestrator or the conductor, however you want to call him or her. They're in charge of making sure the hounds are going where they want them to. So the huntsman is picking a route to take us on. And if the hounds find scent on that route, we're going to give chase. And we do that. We follow the voice of the hounds. So they're baying and howling and whatnot. So we're all required to stay behind behind the huntsman, all in line so that we don't interfere with the hounds working. So my job when I'm hunting is just being very attentive, keeping control of my horse, and just having a good time. I mean, there's not much better than riding through the woods on a horse on a beautiful day, and you're surrounded by people who all want to do the exact same thing as you.
So the foxes that you give chase to, and I mean, so and let me backtrack a little bit. So what you're describing is the hounds do the work, and you organize with other horsemen as a push line or a flush line, where
Yes.
you kind of you create a line that's not going to enable the fox to backtrack.
Right.
Okay. And is the fox wild or is it a released fox?
Wild.
So you
It is live fox. So fox are nocturnal. So they're typically leaving a trail at night, wherever they're walking around or hunting themselves. And so they go back to cover, which is, shrubbery or their den, whatever. And the huntsman is trying to flush out the fox from that cover, from that den, and give chase. And, depending on how good the scenting is, depending on how the fox is feeling, I mean, while we're chasing, that fox can go to ground whenever he wants to escape. And very, very rarely will a pack of foxhounds actually catch a fox. They'll usually just chase it until it goes into the ground. So back in the day, like old English fox hunting, you had to have a terrier man with you to actually help dig up the fox. So he would have a fox terrier that would go into the hole in the ground and start barking when it found the fox. And the terrier man would have a shovel with him and would dig the fox out of the ground. So when we go out, we're very, very rarely ever going to actually catch anything because fox are very smart. If they're smart and healthy, they pretty much always get away.
Gotcha. That's really, it was funny. As soon as you started mentioning that they go underground and you started, I just, oh, terrier. Like that's,
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly, it explains a lot about their attitudes because they crawl down underground after animals. So
Yes, they
almost,
go into the hole in the ground and start yip yapping when they find what
right,
they're looking
right.
for.
Which gives them all their fantastic habits that we enjoy, like the barking and the biting and the anger.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so is this like an all day event? Is there like a breakfast and a lunch, or like people gather afterwards for like brunch or that kind of thing? What is this like on weekends? How's this usually go? Is it organized weeks in advance?
Sure. So living in Middleburg, we have the luxury of having it's something crazy like 10 hunting groups all within 2 hours of
Oh,
Middleburg,
okay.
which that I think that alone is more than any other state just in Northern Virginia. So there are not very many foxhound clubs left. You need a lot of land to do it. You need a lot of landowners permission to ride on their property. So for us, we will meet, if it's warm out, earlier in the morning. In the winter, we meet maybe around 10 or 11 a.m. And, however long the pack is out and the huntsman wants to keep hunting, that's how long you're out. You can turn in early, but you'd need to ask permission to leave because you don't want to disrupt any of the hunting that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So usually 3.5 hours of hunting is about as much as people will do. And this is you're not going at full tilt the whole time. So when you're giving chase, you're probably chasing for 10 or 15 minutes or however long that fox is running. And then otherwise you're at a walk or trot, just following the hounds. They cast into the woods to try to find scent. So it's a mix of walking, cantering, galloping.
Okay.
After you finish hunting, they usually will meet up and have a hunt breakfast afterwards, which is food, drinks, if you've got them, that sort of thing. And then everybody takes their horses home.
So it's like, it almost sounds like, I mean, it's a social occasion. It's getting outdoors. It's like, this is like a get together. Like, I would love this kind of thing. That'd be like, that's a cool, it's a cool setup. And then in being in Virginia, we were just talking about before this about the differences. Like I was letting Miley know that I could just drive a couple hours and be the furthest that you could possibly get in the United States away from Virginia. So I know nothing about, like, I've been to Virginia. That doesn't mean I know anything about it. So but I picture large trees, like thick underbrush. Even on a hot day, you're going to have lots of shade, but there's fields and stuff like that you're going through too. But the humidity is a whole different level for me.
Oh, yes. It's very humid.
Yeah. I can't do that. I live in desert country. So it's kind of a social occasion, brunch, mimosas afterwards kind of thing. And everyone's kind of dressed to the hilt. Like you've got like the full
That's
get-up.
right. It's kind of getting on your Sunday best and then, doing this old traditional thing together. It's really, really fun.
Gotcha. How did you get into I mean, unless you grew up in a family that does this, I want to know the journey of somebody that is like hanging out and goes, I want to chase foxes on a horse.
Yes. And so because owning horses is in itself its own thing, sadly, very expensive to own horses these days. One of the things I wanted to talk about was how much land do you have to do all of these things. Horses, if you're keeping horses yourself, typically you need 1 to 2 acres per horse of pasture land, or you need to be buying hay and grain for that horse. I got into fox hunting because I started working at a fox hunting barn in the Plains part-time. The Plains is a county in Virginia.
Okay.
And, or a town, I should say, in Virginia. So I just got the opportunity to start doing it with work. So, for any other person that doesn't want to do horses for a living, I would say taking lessons, finding a barn that specializes in fox hunting would be your best shot at doing that. Otherwise, you would have to buy your own horse and keep it at home. But a lot of these lesson barns will let you lease out horses to fox hunt on.
Are the hunting clubs invite only, or is this something that anybody could do?
Some of them are. It depends. I would say my hunt, because I'm an employee, I don't have to meet all of the requirements and specifications. For my hunt, you have to be a landowner in the hunt territory. So you have to have, I believe it's 50 acres. The subscription is a few $1,000s a year, I think. or you could pay a capping fee, which is your daily fee for hunting. So if you were not a member, but you were invited or a guest, you could just pay that daily fee and come hunt for the day.
Got you. So this is very much like, so the people that you're probably not going to hunt with strangers is kind of the case.
Yes.
Everyone kind of knows everybody, and
Yes.
I do have this picture that's almost like a church-like scenario where everyone's got on their best, their best clothing, and everyone kind of knows everybody and does this activity together, and it's kind of like it's a regional thing. It's not like somebody's
It is.
and go on a fox hunt randomly.
It definitely is. And, in a small community, you'll see these people at the grocery store, you'll see them out and about in town, et cetera, et cetera. It definitely is a community thing.
So I mean, I could probably sit here for the next hour and just ask you questions about fox hunting, because like I said, it's really interesting to me. But I want to ask you a little bit. You mentioned going into some of the details on equestrian ownership. And so when we're talking about equestrian, and I want to give you the floor for this, but we're talking about things like dressage, or steeplechase, or just recreational riding. Tell me about some of the kind of things that the equestrian facilities in your area are set up to work with, or sort of the things that you have worked with.
Yes. So you'll definitely need your pasture, your water systems. So either, automatic waterers, or you can do bucket watering, water trough out in the field. Most people do like to have a riding arena, which is usually a sand or stone dust base. And they're typically around 100 by 200 feet. And that's just a place you can exercise your horse, no matter how muddy it is outside. So if you're riding out in the country, you don't really want to be riding in the mud, because you're going to ruin people's pasture. You're going to ruin, the fields. Another thing I wanted to mention about where I live in Loudoun and Fauquier County, we have the most gravel and dirt roads in any county in Virginia, still maintained, which is awesome for people that want to ride recreationally, people that want to bike or hike. I think it's a really wonderful thing to keep the same, historic community together. Most people here are against paving the roads. I think it's a wonderful thing to keep people, able to use them for their outdoor activities, such as riding. Another thing, a lot of equestrian facilities have, the barns, so your stables to bring horses in if it's bad weather, or if you just want to stall your horses during the day when it's hot out during the summer, or alternatively, stable your horses at night in the winter when it's cold and raining, etc. Maybe lastly, a bit of a luxury, but a lot of the barns around here have indoor riding arenas, which is truly all weather, no matter what, raining, snowing, blazingly hot. If you have an indoor riding arena, you can ride pretty much any time you would like to. So many things to consider when looking at equestrian properties.
I have a random question that has nothing to do with anything we've talked about. You mentioned how
Sure.
many gravel roads that you have in your area.
Yes.
Do you oil your roads, or do you wet it down with water when it's dusty? How's that managed?
So we were talking about this earlier before we started recording, but Virginia usually gets quite a lot of rain. So we don't have to. I've never heard of oiling your roads before. I didn't know that was a thing.
Here, and it's like it was especially interesting where I grew up. So like in town, it was all gravel roads. It's a logging community. And so if you're not on the highway, the road is not paved. There's a few areas where like people would group together and get their area paved, but in areas that had gravel roads, they would run an oil truck down to keep the dust down, because otherwise you could take a footstep and you have a cloud of dust. Nobody has clean cars. No one's ever heard of a
Right.
clean car. And
Oh
so
my
they would
gosh.
oil the roads, and it would always be like this the first couple days after you get the oil road, because it's in town, right? And you're like, you walk to lunch, you're in school and you walk to the local gas station or whatever to get some food.
Hmm.
And you would like come back and your shoes are covered in oil like the first couple days after you get it.
Oh
And
my
this
gosh.
seems like a different country. Like when you're coming back with oily clothes, but it's a thing to manage the dust.
What kind of oil are they using?
That's a great question. It's probably something toxic that I'm going to read about later. There's
Well,
gonna, there's going to be some kind of class action lawsuit that I'm going to get $5 for. That's going to do me in.
so no, we do not typically have to water or oil our gravel roads, but I will say Virginia is experiencing very low rainfall this summer season, which is unfortunate. We were talking earlier about how hay production is going to be very reduced. A lot of farmers would have already had their first cut in by now. You might get 3 or 4 cuttings in over the summer, depending on how much rain you get. And the grass just isn't going to grow here if we don't get any rain. So yes, it is very dry and very dusty right now.
Gotcha. Okay.
But
And so how has that affected what you're working with? Like, so when you're talking about, you know, you work at an equestrian facility currently too?
yes, part-time in the
Okay.
mornings.
So how, what's that doing to the operations there? Like how is that being managed?
So luckily for us, we have enough land that our horses can go out on the pasture and still receive that nutritional value that they need. Typically, horses are on pasture, which means they're eating grass year round, other than a few months in the winter. You might need to supplement it with hay. Or grain or whatever you need to do to make sure your horses are eating enough, basically. So horses are herbivores, they eat the grass. They pretty much don't need anything else in their diet other than minerals and water. So luckily at my farm, we're doing okay. We haven't needed to supplement with hay yet, but if the grass really does die and they don't have anything to eat outside, then you would need to buy hay and have hay from somewhere else, which is interesting because there's not really going to be any hay here this summer either.
Right.
If it does, the rain does pick up, people will be able to start harvesting hay, but hopefully you've got some in storage. Most people will store some hay at their farms as well.
I got you. So what it sort of, you working at the equestrian facility now, what is sort of your role in managing, and then what do you typically see out of equestrian ownership? Like, is it a business enterprise? Is it a hobby? Is it, like there's a lot of businesses out there that people say are businesses, but they're more like labor of love kind of thing. Is it that, or is this like
Right.
a big income kind of thing? Because the land is some value, the crops are some value, but I assume, just off the top of my head, that the horse breeding and the lineage and the sales of horses are like the real kind of business side of it. So tell me just a little bit about that.
Yes. So if you were running a horse operation, you could be choosing any number of avenues to go on, or you could diversify your income and have multiple ways of making money. So at my farm, it's a private owner. They're just hobby people, basically. And I am in charge of exercising the horses, taking care of their daily needs. After our season of fox hunting ended in March, they had a month off of work, and now we're just coming back into work to get ready and fit for fox hunting in the fall. So if you were a equine business owner and you wanted to be making money off of the business, you would need to be, teaching lessons. That is a good source of income. You can lease out your horses for income. So, for example, some of the farms around us will allow people to basically rent horses for the day to go fox hunting on. Sales, breeding and sales. So if you buy a horse while it's younger, it's going to be cheaper. Or if you breed a horse, it's going to be cheaper. And then once they are older and you've put that training on them, trained them to ride, trained them to be a competition horse, et cetera, then you can sell them for a profit. It is a labor of love. Most people are not expecting to make a ton of money in horses. But it is definitely a tight-knit community, and we're all doing it because we love it. So,
are most of the owners in your area, are they multi-generational families that have grown up in that area, or is this something where people move in because of their love of horses? And just from what you've described, I'm imagining like equestrian, sports kind of rule that area. So are people moving in because of that? And or is it like older families that have been there forever and they'll kind of like buy up the neighbor's place as they expand? I guess the question is, do you get a lot of new residents?
It's a mix. It's a mix for sure. So it's funny you say multi-generational. There's one family who has owned their family farm for, I think, 6 generations now.
Oh, wow.
There are some that have been here almost since the beginning. And so, there are people like that in the community. There are newcomers to the community. A lot of people will move, DC is probably an hour away. So a lot of people will move this direction, trying to get more of the country feel. We're not as far out as, say, the Appalachian, the Blue Ridge Mountains. We're probably right smack in the middle of that. So you can get pretty far away from the city and the bustle and the buzz if you move this direction. Most of the people moving out here definitely do find the appeal of, having, less traffic, the gravel roads, lots of outdoor activities. And, it is a very welcoming community. People really just want to enjoy themselves, I would say, being outside or, again, being away from the hustle and bustle of the city is nice.
Oh yeah. Well, I had to kind of dive in. We were talking beforehand. You told me where you were located. I had to look it up really quick. So Middleburg, Virginia, got a population of 670, which,
yes, very small.
It is directly on par with. I grew up in a town of about 450, and so I understand exactly what you're talking. That's the kind of place where like you could hit a pothole in your car and your neighbors will know about it tomorrow.
Yes. What's interesting about Middleburg, though, is that it's definitely a tourist destination.
Okay.
So we will get a lot of people from out of town coming in. On our main street, we have shopping and restaurants, and Middleburg is quite famous for the equine community. So you can, one of our resorts, in fact, the Salamander, is seriously right in town. And you can, go out on a guided trail ride on horses without having any experience riding at all. So people will definitely come here for all of those appeals, which I had mentioned earlier.
So this is like a true equestrian destination. And I have to like remind anybody listening that I am coming from a true place of ignorance on the entire, horses out here are for like chasing cattle and barrel racing and like
right.
riding, and like everything else doesn't exist. I mean, there's a few equestrian facilities and I've known people that have been involved with it, but I've just never been around it. I can't claim anything. So that I'm coming from like okay, so now I'm learning.
You will find lots of cattle, but not many cowboys.
Right.
Where I am.
Completely understood. So this is like a whole area of equestrian sports. So if you're there, like you're visiting to check it out, is there are there different facilities with like within the town where they have sort of demonstrations of like dressage or steeplechase or those kind of things?
If you want to go to events, there are quite a lot of different disciplines. So you could go to polo matches. They have public polo matches where
So
it's
polo's even a
basically,
thing there.
yes, all of
Okay.
it. It's basically like tailgating an evening, watching a sport like rugby, but on horseback, people bumping into each other, all madly trying to score a goal on horseback. Um, Another one is Twilight Jumpers, which is the same thing. You can go basically tailgate a equestrian competition. So um, that one is show jumping, which is where you're trying to go through a course of jumps as fast as possible without making any mistakes, without pulling any of the rails down. Um, let's see. Yeah, there's just a lot of different activities you can get involved with or spectate. Racing, we actually do have some horse racing in the fall and in the spring, flat racing and hurdles. So that's racing with jumps as well. Those are very fun. That's like a day long uh,
Yeah.
spectator sport.
So if you're in this area, you're into horses. I mean, I'm just going to make the
Most people, most people are.
got you. And then so as you've started working into real estate in that area, um, you know, and you've come at it from the angle of, you went to school and specialized in real estate. As you've gotten to know people, what are sort of when people are looking at some of the land up there, what are some of the things that they have to keep in mind when they're coming into it? Because I'm assuming, unless if you're working with somebody that's already there, they know the land, they know what they need, they know the things, right? Like,
Right.
and some of that's going to be preferential, how they irrigate, how they rotate their horses, the kind of facility that they want. Like that's if you're there, they know that. But for somebody that's coming in from out of town and looking at sort of some of the equestrian setups there, and like let's take your DC crowd that you just brought up, where somebody's coming in from DC and they're looking at this area. There is that mentality of like, I want to get out of the city, I want to be in the country. What are some of the things that they need to know about moving into that area specifically that maybe they hadn't thought of?
Sure. Maybe I would say that they should look into, a lot of the sustainable farming practices that you can do. There's our land use assessment program will actually let you defer real estate taxes if you meet qualifying standards for agricultural, forests, open space uses. So if you're interested in keeping your land open for farming, there are a lot of incentives to let you do that. You know, Conservation equipment tax exemptions. So cover crops, riparian buffers, if you have wetlands, you can get up to 75% of those costs covered if you are interested in doing that. Another great thing for people who may not know much about agricultural land use is you can actually have multiple different income streams, like offering hunting leases to hunters, or you could lease your fields out to other farmers, or for horse pasture. Another thing that I've kind of seen people get into is actually solar. It's not super common in Virginia yet. It might be more common with you guys, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
But
we
you
got quite a few.
can install or lease out your land for solar production. Those are just a few things that I can think of.
And then the community, it's always essential. So somebody coming from an urban area into a town of 670 people, what do you see people adjust to that
Yes.
fairly quickly? That's one I have to ask and throw in there too, because that's something that people I don't think about a lot.
There are a lot of share the road signs. You will encounter many, many tractors out and about on the roadways. You know, being careful when you drive past people on horseback. That's something that a lot of people from out of town might not understand. So horses are frankly very flighty animals. They get spooked very easily. So one thing that's essential is, if you're sharing the road, and this honestly also applies to bikers, people that are cycling, just please take your time, slow down a little bit, and ease over on the other side of the road is much appreciated. When I'm out on the roadways, I'm always trying to make sure that I'm just being very safe. If I can, I'll pull off the road actually when I see a car coming. But those are definitely three things you've got to watch out for on the road is horses, cyclists, and tractors. We definitely have it all.
I will now have that comparison stuck in my head for a good long time that bicyclers are flighty and spooky, and you have to be very careful around cyclists. You might scare
Yes.
one, and they might take off through the fields. You don't want a cyclist hopping the fence and taking off.
That's
On an
right.
unnecessary ride through
Dumping its rider.
flying along with spandex through the field and doing the thing. So I don't need that. So that's another thing to keep in mind though is in your area that horses are everywhere and that, like you're probably going to encounter one on the road or doing their thing.
Yes.
So in terms of land values over the last few years, we've seen where during that 2020 2022, we'll just say the COVID time period,
The craze.
the
Yes.
craze, right? All the land values went through the ceiling. uh I'm That's a whole different conversation, but we saw land values spike. Have you seen much adjustment in your area to land values over the course of the last, say, year and a half?
I mean, we definitely had the exact same thing happen. So I will theorize that it was because people were at home. They no longer wanted to live, in close quarters with each other. So I think, seriously, land was a very sought after commodity. I would definitely say prices have steadied, if not that prices are lowering a little bit. Interest rates are still high. Our market, at least, properties are not flying as quickly as they did, when people were putting their payments in cash. And oh my gosh, it was difficult to even
Get
a toehold in on a property at that
Yeah, for
point.
those listening that were not involved in real estate during that time, it was sort of a gold rush, crazy town. I think in every rural community across the United States.
Yes.
And then, as we've talked to economists over the last year, what everybody has anticipated is a plateau to a possible minor decline. And that's we've seen like a 30% to, what is going to say between 20 and 30% drop in actual listings and transactions, and
Yes.
sort of a plateau in prices. And I think that that's held up, and it's probably going to hold up throughout the year. But every little pocket in every little area is different. You could, like, the whole country could be in a crash, and then, your area could be doing crazy business. So
That's right.
that's why I wanted to ask that question, is to see if it's sort of done the same thing there.
Well, and one thing I would make a comment on is everybody wants a 3 to 4 bedroom house on 10 acres. That's what everybody is looking for. There's lots of plots of land that are gorgeous and tons of acreage, wonderful. A lot of people don't actually want the maintenance of all of that land. So I would say, under 25 acres, but more than 5 is what most people in my area are highly sought after still.
And are are those available, or are most of the parcels like because you mentioned kind of that staple 50-acre parcel as being kind of the base kind of level. Is that where most of the properties
Yes.
are at? So there's this
Yes.
so there's a community of in kind of, let me paraphrase here, of like the individuals that want to move and get the rural lifestyle, but it's one of those like, I don't really want to do the rural work.
The work. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I see that a lot. That happens out west a lot with it's like the hobby ranchettes, and it's like, I
Hmm.
want the trees. I don't want to do anything with them. I want my view, but I don't want to do any of that country work stuff.
Right.
It's definitely a thing. So are those sell at a premium, I'm guessing.
Yes, and they are harder to come by. I mean, when one of those does come on the market, that is what is snapped up right away, I would say.
Yeah, and I don't look down on that at all. I know I'm kind of joking about it, but like I don't, I've worked very hard for soft hands. I started out in agriculture, but like whenever I have to like go back and do any work like that, it's like, oh yeah, this stuff's really hard. Now,
Yes.
I totally understand that, but at the same time, I would kind of like to do those kind of things as well. Um, so as far as real estate in your area, you're specializing in land. You work with National Land Realty, so I think that part has to be obvious.
That's
Um,
correct. Yeah.
what are some of the conversations that you're having in your area that are important to people either selling or buying? Just whether they're clients or not, just about their land. Like, are they, are people looking to get out of the equestrian field and move into something else? Are they looking to move into the city? They're just getting tired of all the work kind of stuff, or what's sort of some of the conversations that you're having?
Well, some people are really happy with what they're doing and want to stay forever. People that do want to sell, uh, actually have a few out of town clients that are for actually out of state that want to finally sell their properties. While prices are the highest they've ever been, um, people do want to sell that have excess land, I would say, that they are not using. Most people, if they're here, then they're happy here and they don't typically want to move away. I would say,
Sounds kind of like a little bit of a paradise. Like
yeah,
the picture that you painted is kind of this like paradise ideal little community and it's very specific to a certain lifestyle and a certain,
it
pursuit.
is.
But if you're into that, it would be like, out here, I grew up skiing. If I got to live on like, live at the base of Vale or something like that,
Right. If you're
and
all
ski
doing the same
yeah,
thing, yes.
it's a cool community sounding thing. And
Yes.
but you just spoke to something that's really, I think a lot of what we're seeing nationwide is, yes, we have interest rates that are high, and land may not be capturing what it did 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, where it was just crazy town, but they're the highest prices we've ever seen. It is a time for
Yes.
some landowners to capitalize, and or even like there's that possibility of a 1031. If you're running a business like an equestrian facility, you it's a time to capitalize, 1031 that, and you can move that from anything to, you know, a commercial building to another property somewhere else, or it people can make a move right now because they have that equity, and there's an opportunity.
Exactly.
Okay, and that
Yes.
makes a lot of sense. So, uh, we're moving up on the end of the time here. You work specifically around Northern Virginia and not all of Virginia, but mostly up north.
Yes. Virginia is actually a bit bigger than people would think. I would
Uh-huh.
say if you drove from the very across the bottom of the state line, it might take 12. It might take 12 hours to get it all the way across. And if you drove from the very northernmost part to that southern border, I think it's about 6 hours. So I try to stay around Northern Virginia. The furthest south I would probably go is Fredericksburg, uh, Richmond, but we have our own Richmond office in Richmond. Those guys are doing very well down there. And then in north of me is Maryland. So I would like to get licensed in Maryland eventually. But for right now, I'm definitely centrally focused on the 2 counties surrounding Middleburg and then that same area. You know, there's a lot of business to be had just right where I am.
That sounds fantastic. Well, Miley, and again, so if you're out there and you are looking to get into an area that is an equestrian paradise, or looking to move into equestrian sports, North Virginia is the place to be, and Miley Holtzman is the person to talk to.
Give me a call.
Yeah, definitely. So, Miley, I've enjoyed this. Thank you very much. As things move on, I'm curious to learn more and more about fox hunting and equestrian sports. So I'll have to get you back on here.
Sure, it was great talking with you, Matt. Thanks so much.
Excellent. Thank you. This concludes episode number 101 for the National Land Realty podcast, discussing the land of Middleburg, Virginia with National Land Realty agent Miley Holtzman. You can learn more about land ownership and the buying and selling of land at nationalland.com.